Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone. I am so very happy to be with you today on a distant, far away from the Philippines. I'm going to share to you about gender justice. And so our presentation would emanate from the book of Luke, chapter 13, verses 10 to 17. And this is about the bent over woman. May I request that you can read it on bended knee or however you want to experience the bent over woman situation. Okay, I have some questions for our study together today. What do you see in the picture? What do you see in the story? And who are the people in the story? What is the situation of the woman? How does she feel to be on bended knee or in a situation that is not normal? Do you hear the people talking around her? What are people saying about the situation of this bended or bent over woman? How about you? What are your feelings about the bent over woman? Have you seen a bent over woman in your life? Who are the bent over women today in your places, in your country, in your villages? Do you know them? Are they visible? Our key concepts today would talk about gender, and then sexuality, and then culture of patriarchy, justice, and spirituality. I would like to share with you the meaning of gender. This has been part of our courses in feminism and feminist theology held by the Institute of Women's Studies, led by Sister Mary Jan Manansan, and so I happen to be one of the students. And I love this lesson that I learned. Gender is a social category, is a culture bound, meaning gender is defined by practices, principles that we live by, and statements that we get, and factors that influence us in our lives. And gender also refers to roles, role of women and men, identities. Am I rich? Am I indigenous? Am I poor? And traits assigned to women and men. But these roles and identities and traits assigned to women and men are learned or acquired. So that culture of nations are different from other cultures. Also, gender is a socially constructive agenda. It's designed by social and cultural factors. If it is defined by social and cultural factors, it means gender can be transformed. That is the beauty of this one. So, patriarchy is a system of relationships, beliefs, and values embedded in the political, social, and economic systems that causes the structure of inequality between men and women. Patriarchy attributes sins as feminine pertaining to women are undervalued. Any attributes as feminine pertaining to women are undervalued, while attributes regarded as masculine referring to as privilege of men. Patriarchy is a system of society of governance in which men hold the power and women are largely excluded from it. So, men dominates and women subordinates. Can you take that as a challenge? Women is defined by social and gender construct. This is what we call patriarchy. Male domination, male leadership, male values, male decisions. This is patriarchy. In the olden times, many countries are colonized and share a common heritage of a colonized culture of submission and subordination, but with years of resistance and struggles. Nations conquered by war are devastated, abused, and colonized by patriarchal forces and systems against people. And these people are considered non-people. And in history, it attests to these years of colonialism, waged by rich countries like Britain, Japan, Portugal, Netherlands, USA. At the moment, as you know, is the war of Russia against Ukraine. But the colonial powers left a memory of destruction against countries, and their harmonious living conditions are devastated, highly devastated. And the economy and the political systems and cultural values are lost. Today, we remember Ukraine in our prayers. You know, in the Philippines, we always pray for Ukraine. In all churches, Ukraine, because it is one of those wars that we have witnessed in our lifetime. Ukraine accuses Russian troops of rape, Box Tribunal. And there is a YouTube on this one, so I will present to you the YouTube.
The UN is investigating reports of sexual violence by Russian forces in Bucha and in other cities across Ukraine. Under international law, rape and sexual assault are considered war crimes. Molly Hunter now with a harrowing account from one woman accusing a Russian soldier of rape.
28-year-old Olena and her husband Sasha were living in Hostomel when the war started. In early March, while she was out looking for water, Olena was captured by Russian troops, she says, held hostage in a one-room apartment for 2 days. But it was about to get even worse, starting the moment she was hit by a piece of burning metal shrapnel. That's Olena's day one.
Я думала, що я вмираю. Це взагалі було так боляче, до ужасу. Пекло огнем аж.
Can you describe the wound?
На лівій стороні груді, нижче соска так.
She was in so much pain that on day 2, by Olena's timeline, she went looking for first aid. Russian soldiers occupying her town said they could help.
Сусідки, може, там пелики сіли, що чи перемітувати. Вийшла, а другий стояв уже на вулиці, просто курив сигарету. Сказав, просто йди додому. Це для твоєї безпеки.
Olena is thin, with a slight build. We're not showing her full face. She and her husband were very poor even before the war broke out. They have a 7-year-old daughter, they tell me. She's with relatives. On Olena's day 3, Russian soldiers offering medical aid again changed her bandages, she says.
So now we're at day 4. What happens day 4?
Він мені приїхав надати.
She tells us 3 different soldiers came to their house dressed in civilian clothes, saying they were there to help. She has no idea how they knew she was wounded. One of them, a Russian speaker, said he could take a look at her wound, she says, taking her upstairs.
Ребра йому сломали. Я неожиданно спускалася з другого етажа.
So she went back downstairs.
Вони його хотіли добити, я так поняла. Вони йому ребра сломали. Мене муж потім сказав, що вже вони хотіли далі добити. Просто я спустилася вже.
Medics tell us her husband had at least one broken rib. And the following morning on day 5, the soldier who had been upstairs with Olena returned.
Приїхав обратно подивитися рану. Я кажу, со мною все нормально, говорю. Не треба, говорю, мене дивитися, говорю. Говорю, глянь мужа, говорю. Він навіть не став його дивитися. Я говорю, ну, може, мужа оглянеш. Він сразу до мене почав. Налякана дуже була.
She made a run for it, arriving home in tears. Afraid the Russian soldiers might return, they fled to this area of Bucha, which is where we met them.
Are you angry? Have you even had time to process?
Бог йому суддя. Бог його суддя.
Molly Hunter, NBC News, Kyiv.
But however, we discuss abuses against women today. Rape in the context of conflict. Conservative estimates suggest that 20,000 to 50,000 women were raped during the 1992 to 1995 war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, while approximately 250,000 to 500,000 women and girls were targeted in the 1994 Rwandan genocide. Between 50,000 and 64,000 women in camps for internally displaced people in Sierra Leone were sexually assaulted by combatants between 1991 to 2001, long years of violence against women. In Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, at least 200,000 cases of sexual violence, mostly involving women and girls, have been documented since 1996, and the actual numbers are believed to be higher. So I have a question. Maybe this is also your question. Why are women, why are girls targeted, they are targets and victims of sexual abuse and violence? What do you think so? Do you have any idea? Do you have any costume that would allow this? Or do you have any laws that would not allow? Or have you gone to a study deeper? Why is this going on? One of the things is that the sexual violence is about bringing the culture of colonizers into those countries they colonize. You know, colonization carries with it the exploitation of lands, properties, and people, especially women, youth, and children. It's like the Spaniards conquered the Philippines for 30 years. So we learn a lot of their culture. In history, there are a lot of women who were battered, children who were killed, and women who are raped in those times. And there is also an Americanization, McDonaldization, etc., which are part of the whole enterprise of war. Let me define patriarchy for us to understand why is this happening. Patriarchy has a culture of submission and subordination and runs through relationships and structures within the family, within neighborhood, within church and community, nations and global world. Patriarchy facilitates gender violence. Spirituality and gender justice. I love these words, spirituality and gender justice. Gender spirituality embraces psychological, potential, social, and cultural health and well-being of individuals, nations, and collective countries for women, men, youth, and children. The other definition is that we have a gender lens. Our orientation helps us define gender. For example, the church defined gender as a way of connecting, building relations to people, and also is a way of knowing what factors and determination that confront lives of people within a community or within a nation. And within ages, I would like to share to you that the women conditions caused by gender discrimination confronts 70 to 90% of women. And these statistics will help us direct to do our best help to improve people's lives to a much better situation. Meaning, knowing the statistics, 70 to 90% of women is just grave. It's very serious. And therefore, it commits us to help women to improve their lives to a much better situation. So in here, in the gender lens, we can decide what to do with people who are victimized by gender discrimination and gender gaps. And this is our commitment as women. One of the inspirations that may help us come up with our maybe commitment or resolution or vision or mission is that I love this statement: women coming together. The World Federation of Methodist and Uniting Women has always been a great event, great gift, precious gift whenever they meet and we meet as an assembly. Because the World Federation of Methodist and Uniting Women has always been very, very consistent in its commitment and dedication to life. I was reading the history. I was trying to see all the shades of gender discussion, gender discrimination as defined. But all the organizations of the World Federation of Methodist and Uniting Women is as far in its commitment and power and dedication and commitment and vision to save lives, men, women, youth, children, and the whole cosmos. This is very glaring. It is a very, very powerful contributions to humanity. World Federation of Methodist and Uniting Women has been consistent in its initiative, in our initiative, to create peace by our commitment to erase discrimination, exploitation, and to increase our capacity to give our lives for sake of life. I would like to share to you the history of women who were empowered, who have seen God's love, embraced by God's power to help the society where they are in. These are empowered women leaders who are deeply committed to God's call to love people and deeply committed to share their knowledge, their expertise, their time and commitment to justice and peace for the world. One of them is Mary Wollstonecraft. She is a writer and a philosopher of women's rights. Talking about women's rights is a big commitment. It can change the world of women when we talk about women's rights. And of course, we have Susan Anthony, who is described as the champion of women's rights in her advocacy. And of course, I love this name, Sojourner Truth, who is an abolitionist and suffragist. Have you read them? Have you seen them? Have you heard them? And I want to continue Harriet also an abolitionist and liberator. Tubman. These are women who have given birth to society where justice and peace exist. And we have Lucette Most, women's suffrage advocate. Antoinette Brown Blackwell, first ordained women ministers in America. You know, I'm very fond of, because I belong to the workers' church, I'm a deaconess of the church. And so, you know, the commitment of deaconesses is just a whole life. And also of ministers and clergy all, you know, all over the world are so committed and dedicated to be able to let people know that their lives are so precious in the sight of God, and that God makes their lives as light and blessings to the world. They are the shining stars wherever they are. And Lucy Stone, this is a very popular name for me because I have read their story, is a women's rights advocate. You know, women's rights advocates are needed in these times when we have a high exploitation of people, human rights people are dying, poor people are neglected, and so their rights, you know, are also violated. And Lucy Stone, I'm very sure, I see her, you know, in those times as a human rights activist, not only an activist, but I think she would have gathered children on the streets to feed them. And women who cannot do much because they are poor for their right to live. Another one is Elizabeth Cady Stanton, also a women's rights suffrage leader. I would imagine that these women cannot sleep, these women cannot stay at rest until they save women on the road which they see who are violated. And a lot more. We have a lot of women. I'm so glad for our mothers and for mothers that their legacy of love and care, legacy of justice and truth is not resting on them, but it's vibrating in every cell of women's lives and men as well. I would like to mention Aung San Suu Kyi. I'm very sure you know her very well. One of the bravest women in the world. And her capacity, her powers to lead the Buddhist people, the Christian people in Myanmar is exemplary. That even in prison, she commands the hearts of people to defend their country. So in Asia and even in the world, she's one of those leaders, the president who has been negated, who has been imprisoned, but keep fighting while she is in prison. She is a democracy of the Myanmar icon who fell from grace, as they say, but she is fighting. She is fighting. You know, I have several women in my heart. I love them all. I'm inspired by them all, but I can only mention few, and I'm inspired to read women's lives for sake of life. So the next woman I'm going to share with you is Sister Mary John Manansan. Sister Mary John Manansan was my professor in my studies of gender of the Institute of Women and Religion and Culture. Sister Mary John Manansan was detained. She's still marching and marching and marching with us whenever we have a protest event in the Philippines. Sister Mary John commit herself to life, undoubtedly. And she says, this is the voice of Sister Mary John I would like to share with you. As a religious woman, I believe in the respect. I believe in the compassion. I believe in reverence for all persons because I believe they were all made in the image and likeness of God. Sister Mary John is well-sought speaker among women groups in the Philippines, not only in the Philippines, but in Asia and in the US. The next woman I would like to share with you is a very exciting woman, a beautiful woman, a very young woman. Her name is Anastasia Lena, is the Miss Ukraine. And she was part of the Miss Universe contest. And after the Miss Universe event, she went home and said to herself, I don't have any problem with homes. I don't have any problem with food. I don't have any problem with security while I'm doing my responsibility representing Miss Ukraine. But my heart is so hurting. My heart is so sad. My heart is so lonely. And this is because Ukraine, my country, is at war. And I can never imagine that Ukraine, my beloved country, is at war. So what Anastasia Lena did is to get a plane. You know, she is a military woman. She knows how to maneuver airplanes. And she was so hurt. She was so devastated by the fight against the Russian invasion against her country. And so what she did was to maneuver a plane, and she wanted to bring all the children who are escaping, you know, in a very, very safe place, sacred place where children can know and when children will enjoy their life in their in the midst of what's going. So, the spiritual question might be like this: who am I as a person? Who is Anastasia Lena? Who is Sister Mary Jan Manansan? Who is Aung San Suu Kyi? Who are those ancestors, women ancestresses, who gave their lives to humanity, who gave their lives to their country, who gave their lives so that others may live? This is a very, very big question. It is also a very, very sacred question. Who am I as a person? Who am I as a soul? Who am I as a life? Who am I as a church person? We have a lot of definitions of who am I. The first noble definitions that we have by presenting the lives of women are just so encouraging, very powerful, very courageous women. But sometimes, in these times, women are used to do commercialization of many kinds of products. They are commercialized. In other words, they sell products that cannot save people's lives. That's culture also at the same time. The culture of commercial, how do you call this? Consumerism. The culture of capitalism. The culture of production that derive people's lives, especially the poor who cannot afford to buy commercial products. But it is a very nice question. Who am I? I would like to share to you another noble and sacred man. I learned this when I was in high school in literature. His name is Albert Einstein. Does this ring to your ears? This is a very noble man, very great man. I would like to share to you what he says. A human being is part of the whole. You and me are part of the whole, called by the universe. The universe is our home, a part limited in time and space. It is limited in time and space because we can only be where we are. We can only eat where we are. We cannot go to a lot of spaces where we wanted to be. He experiences himself and his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest. Maybe it's a kind of, how do you call, optical delusions of consciousness. When we want to be with people and that we have a limitations, we imagine that they are with us because our lives are made of higher consciousness from our Creator. And he says his experience. My delusion of consciousness is a kind of prison for me and for us. And consciousness is like restricting us to a personal desire and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison of the self in order to widen our circle of compassion and embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. You know, I'm a student of cosmology. This is a course of the Asian Social Institute. We call it cosmic anthropology, that everything is related. The animals, the birds are our cousins. I think so, right? The trees, they give us life and we give them life. Those beautiful trees around us are source of our life. You know, in my office, there is a big tree across the street. And so whenever I do my work here, I open the window and breathe into that tree, beautiful tree. It's a big tree. And it has little flowers. It has little leaves. But it is a very powerful tree because it gives its beauty to people. It relates the oxygen that comes out or emanates from its roots and from its leaves to people. So it's a life-giving tree, giving life to people, giving life to the earth, giving life to our existence. I would say, and you believe, human beings are relational beings with the birds, with the ants, with whatever flying creatures that we have, whatever swimming creatures that we know. They are connected to us. We are one self. We are one with nature, and we are one in God. Our lives, both creation, you and me, and all others whom we do not know, are connected. We are into interconnectedness of life all over the world. When you see the moon, let me say, you are connected with the moon if you appreciate the beauty. When you see the stars and the suns that gives you energy, we are connected to the web of life. That is how we human beings are relational being, connected to each other. What else can we say about who we are? We are a spiritual being that emanates from the universe. You know, this is a new science right now. A spiritual being, you and me are a spiritual being, which emanates from the universe source of life, that is God, and from God as lights emanates from the sun. I hope you still have time to see sunrise, sunset, you know, the clouds simmering by the lights of the sun or the moon. This is life because we are spiritual being. We transcend to what is situations that we are into, to transcend to what is holy and what is sacred. Only God is sacred. Only God is holy. So we are connected with God, our Creator, and we are not separated at all. This is, you know, is a very, very deep gift. Another transcendence is that we know this very well, that human persons created according to God's image and likeness. Have you meditated on this verse of Genesis 1:26-27? Are you wondering why it is started from the book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible, on Genesis 1:26-27? What does it mean to you when you and me are created according to God's image and likeness? What is God's image to you? What is God's likeness to you? How do you emanate from this gift of God's image, from this gift of being in likeness of God? What do you do? How do you love? How do you love people? What are you creating? So, this is a very sacred relationship with God because we are created in His likeness and image. Aren't you happy for this one? And we are in Psalms chapter 8, verse 5. It says, "Yet you have made them a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor." My God, we are crowned with glory and honor. What is that? Have you experienced any that make you crowned with glory and honor? Have you experienced God's love full of glory and God's right for us and privilege full of honor? How do you feel? What is the feeling of being crowned with glory and honor by God? And what does it mean when we are made little lower than God? My God, we are all sacred beings. When I was reading this and I was reflecting, I said, do I carry this, Lord? Is this me, Lord? If this is me, what should I do? What are qualities that I have to exude in order to experience being crowned with your glory? And so our challenge as people is to be with the image of God, is to be living as a spiritual being. Because God is a spiritual being, because God communicates with us spiritually, because God shows us being a spiritual being is an image of God. I think, and I'm sure, you and me are divine beings. You and me have embodied the Spirit of God. What does that mean? The embodiment of the body of God is human being. The embodiment of the Spirit, when Jesus says, "I came that you may have life and have it more abundantly." Maybe the reason why Jesus came to undo the thoughts of the Old Testament battlegrounds is to create a New Testament world. We really need to offer ourselves deep thinking of Jesus' message to us as the New Testament message. You know, I love the indigenous peoples of my country, of their culture, of their caring, of their surviving on earth. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believe in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And you go on and on and on and on. We are spiritual beings. We are God's creation. We are God's servant. We are relational, interconnected, related with nature and with God. We are interconnected. And we are not simply of the who am I by, defining ourselves as material things. But we are endowed with spirituality beyond our understanding. But God carries us through. God has never stopped communicating with us in the spirit of love, in the spirit of faith, in the spirit of transcendence, because we are God's. And God is powerful as our Creator. How about you? What do you think of being a creation of God's image? What do you think of being part of the whole cosmos? What do you think of being called a servant of God, serving our people, serving our country in the best way we can? So you and me can not only defined by gender, you and me cannot be defined by social construct, but we are defined by God, of God's power for us to give life to those who are in need. The power of the image of God is a gift so that we can endow, we can help, we can support people who are in need, people who are poor, because our faith in God is deeper in our lives, and in order to help people who are in need, to save people who are in need, to protect people who are in need, and to give our lives for the ransom of the many. What is your meditation? What do you think of this? We are gifts of God's heavenly bodies. We are gifts of God's love for us to serve humanity, to save the earth, and to save the whole universe. Maybe we can have our reflection if you want. What is the World Federation of Methodists and Uniting Women offer to the future? This leadership is exemplary. I was very happy and awed by the history of the World Federation of Methodists and Uniting Women. The United Women in Faith is consistent and faithful in her great mission of transforming lives for women, youth, and children through leadership, development, and gender justice education. These programs are vibrating around the world as key agenda of mission of the United Women in Faith. This organization is a catalyst among women and to the world. This is a gift to the whole generation, to the whole life of people around us. Let us be lights, be joyful, and be at peace, helping one another. So God helps us. Thank you so much for this opportunity of conversing with you, and for this opportunity of empowering myself and empowering one another to come back that which is original, daughters and sons of God as co-creator. Amen and amen. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.